Most heart attacks do not happen at the gym, on a treadmill, or carrying groceries up the stairs. They happen in bed, between 3 and 7 in the morning, while the body is completely still and completely unaware. If you are over 60, you sleep directly through the most dangerous window of your entire day, every single night, without ever knowing it happened. Maybe you already know this feeling. You wake up at 3 in the morning for no reason at all, heart beating slightly too fast, mouth dry, no nightmare, no noise, nothing you can point to. You lie there in the dark, wondering why your own body would do this to you. Here is what almost nobody explains. That hour is not random. Blood pressure rises, arteries stiffen, blood becomes slightly more prone to clotting. This is the exact window when the majority of strokes and heart attacks actually occur. Now here is the part that stopped me cold the first time I read the research behind it. There is a small ordinary bottle sitting in almost every kitchen that scientists have studied specifically for its effect on those exact hours. Not a prescription, not a supplement aisle product. Something so common most people pour it over a salad without a second thought and never once consider what it might be doing to their heart while they sleep. Tonight, I am going to walk you through exactly what happens inside your body, hour by hour, if you take a small amount of this before bed. What it does to your heart during the most dangerous stretch of the night. What it does to your joints while you sleep. What it does to your blood sugar before sunrise. And what it quietly does to the part of your brain responsible for memory. By the end of this video, you will understand your own body during the night better than most people ever will. And there is one part of this you need to hear clearly, because for a small number of people, this is genuinely important to know before you try it tonight. My name is Dr. William, and I have spent many years working closely with older adults, sitting across from real patients, answering the same honest questions again and again. Why do my joints hurt more in the morning than they did the night before? Why does my blood pressure look worse on my home monitor at night than during the day? Why does my memory feel a little less sharp than it used to? Tonight we are going to answer some of that together, starting with one of the simplest habits I know, a tablespoon of olive oil, taken before bed. Let us start exactly where this matters most, your heart during the hours you are least aware of it. I mentioned this at the very beginning, and I want you to understand the biology behind it clearly, because once you understand it, the rest of this video will make complete sense. As we age, our arteries gradually lose some of their natural flexibility. Part of this is simply time, but a large part of it comes from a slow, ongoing process called oxidative damage to LDL cholesterol. I want to be precise here, because this single distinction changes how you should think about cholesterol for the rest of your life. Regular LDL cholesterol floating in your bloodstream is not nearly as dangerous as most people believe. The real danger comes from oxidized LDL, cholesterol that has been chemically altered by oxidative stress. Oxidized LDL is what actually burrows into the walls of your arteries and begins building plaque. Unoxidized LDL mostly passes through without causing that kind of damage. This is where olive oil enters the story in a very specific way. Extra virgin olive oil is roughly 73% oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that has been studied extensively for its ability to reduce LDL oxidation. One of the largest dietary trials ever conducted on heart health, called PREDIMEND, followed thousands of older adults across Spain for years. The adults who regularly consumed extra virgin olive oil as part of their daily diet experienced roughly 30% fewer major cardiovascular events, including heart attacks and strokes, compared to those who did not. 30%. That is not a small effect from a kitchen ingredient. That is the kind of number that changes how serious doctors talk to their patients about diet. Now here is the part that almost nobody explains correctly. Your liver does the majority of its cholesterol processing work during the night, while you sleep, particularly in the hours leading up to early morning. If you take your olive oil during the day, with lunch or dinner, those protective compounds have largely been processed and cleared by the time your arteries face their most dangerous hours. But if you take it before bed, those same compounds are still actively circulating in your bloodstream, right as your body enters that 3 to 7 a.m. window. You are not just adding a healthy fat to your diet. You are timing it to reach the exact hours your cardiovascular system needs the most support. Have you ever checked your blood pressure first thing in the morning and noticed it reads higher than it did the night before? That difference is part of what we are talking about. It is not your imagination, and it is not a faulty monitor. It is your circulatory system responding to the most demanding hours of its daily cycle. Now I need you to listen carefully to this next part because it is the single most important piece of safety information in this entire video. If you take blood-thinning medication, including warfarin, daily aspirin therapy, or clopidogrel, or if you have an upcoming surgery scheduled, please speak with your doctor before making nightly olive oil a regular habit. The same natural compounds that protect your arteries also have a mild, naturally blood-thinning effect of their own. For the vast majority of people, this effect is gentle and harmless. But if you are already on medication designed specifically to thin your blood, adding another mild blood thinning influence on top of it is something your physician needs to know about and approve. This is not a reason to avoid olive oil. It is simply a 5-minute conversation that protects you completely, and I would rather you hear this clearly once than have it buried in vague disclaimers throughout this video. With that said, let us continue, because your heart is only the beginning of this story. If this kind of explanation, the real biology behind something this simple, is useful to you, take a moment right now to drop a comment with your age and the one health concern that worries you the most at night. I genuinely read these, and they shape exactly what we cover in future videos on this channel. Somewhere between the second and fourth hour of sleep, your body enters its deepest, most restorative stage. And this is where a completely different part of olive oil's effect begins. Have you ever noticed that your knees, hips, or hands feel stiffer in the first few minutes after waking than they did the night before? That stiffness has a specific cause. Inside your joints sits a thin layer of tissue called the synovial membrane, responsible for producing the fluid that allows your bones to glide smoothly against one another. After 60, this tissue naturally slows its fluid production, and a low constant level of inflammation gradually wears down the cartilage underneath it. This is the biological foundation of osteoarthritis, one of the most common conditions affecting older adults. This is precisely where oleocanthal, the natural anti-inflammatory compound found in good quality extra virgin olive oil, becomes relevant again, but in a different part of the body than before. Researchers have linked olive oil's polyphenols to reduced activity of specific inflammatory signals connected to cartilage breakdown. I want to be completely honest with you about what this means and what it does not mean. This will not regrow cartilage you have already lost. But supporting a calmer overall inflammatory environment is genuinely one of the most evidence-backed ways we know of to slow further joint wear, and consistency matters far more here than any single dose. Deep sleep is also when growth hormone naturally reaches its highest level, particularly within the first 2 hours after falling asleep. Growth hormone plays a direct role in tissue repair, including the slow, ongoing maintenance of muscle. After the age of 60, most adults lose roughly 1 to 2% of their muscle mass every single year if nothing actively counters it. This condition has an actual medical name, sarcopenia, and it is one of the quiet reasons falls become more dangerous with age. Less muscle means less stability, slower reaction time, and a much harder recovery if a fall does happen. Olive oil cannot build muscle by itself, and I want to be clear about that rather than overselling it. But a diet built around healthy monounsaturated fat, paired with enough protein earlier in the evening, gives your body better raw material to work with during exactly the hours growth hormone is doing its repair work. A small serving of yogurt, cottage cheese, or a boiled egg a little earlier in the evening, alongside your nightly olive oil, gives your body both the anti-inflammatory support and the protein building blocks at the same time your repair systems are most active. There is one more system working quietly during these deep hours that almost nobody talks about, and that is your skin and your immune system together. Skin cell turnover and collagen production both rise during deep sleep, driven largely by that same overnight growth hormone surge. At the same time, your immune system uses these hours to regulate inflammatory signaling throughout your entire body, the same broad category of inflammation we have already discussed twice tonight, because it truly does touch almost everything. A diet lower in oxidative stress, supported by olive oil's polyphenols, gives your immune system a calmer baseline to work from during this nightly reset. Now we arrive at the part of this video that, when I first read the research behind it years ago, genuinely changed how I think about something as simple as a spoonful of oil before bed. While you sleep, your brain undergoes something remarkable. It physically shrinks slightly, allowing fluid to wash through the spaces between brain cells, almost like a gentle nightly rinse cycle. Scientists call this the glymphatic system, and its job is to clear out metabolic waste that accumulates during your waking hours, including a protein called beta amyloid, the same protein associated with cognitive decline later in life. Here's the detail that matters most. This system operates almost entirely during sleep. It is essentially switched off while you are awake and active. Have you ever wondered why doctors keep returning to sleep quality whenever the conversation turns to memory? This is exactly why. It is not a vague wellness connection. It is structural biology. The Mediterranean dietary pattern, in which olive oil is the primary fat source, has been studied for decades in relation to cognitive aging, and the research consistently points in one direction. Older adults who follow this pattern of eating tend to show slower rates of cognitive decline compared to those who do not. Olive oil is not a standalone cure, and I will not pretend otherwise. but it sits at the center of one of the most consistently studied dietary patterns we have for protecting the aging brain. And taking it in the evening means its anti-inflammatory compounds are present in your system right as your brain's overnight cleaning cycle begins its work. As night moves toward morning, your body faces one more challenge most people have never had explained to them clearly. Between roughly 4 and 8 in the morning, your liver releases stored glucose into your bloodstream in anticipation of you waking up and needing energy. This happens in everyone, every single day, without exception. Doctors call it the dawn phenomenon. In a body with strong insulin sensitivity, this rise is smooth and unnoticeable. In a body with insulin resistance, which affects a large share of adults over 65, whether or not it has ever been formally diagnosed, that same release can cause a more significant spike in blood sugar every single morning, silently. Why should a spike you sleep through and never feel matter to you at all? Because these spikes accumulate damage you cannot see. Night after night, year after year, they contribute to the slow vascular wear that eventually shows up as nerve discomfort, vision changes, or a diabetes diagnosis that seems to appear with no warning. This is where olive oil plays a genuinely practical role. It slows gastric emptying, meaning food, including any natural sugars in your last meal of the day, moves more gradually from your stomach into your intestine, producing a gentler rise in blood sugar rather than a sharp one. Oleic acid also acts directly on insulin receptors in your muscle and liver cells, helping those receptors respond more efficiently to the insulin your pancreas produces. Multiple studies on Mediterranean-style eating, where olive oil replaces less healthy fats as the primary dietary fat, have shown measurably steadier overnight blood sugar patterns in older adults compared to diets built around saturated fat. Taking your tablespoon roughly 20 to 30 minutes before your last small bite of the evening, rather than earlier in the afternoon, places these effects exactly where your body needs them, right before it begins its overnight balancing act. A patient of mine, a woman in her late 70s who I will simply call a longtime patient out of respect for her privacy, came to me frustrated that her morning blood sugar readings never seemed to improve no matter what she tried. We talked through her evening routine in detail, and one of the simplest changes we made was moving a tablespoon of good olive oil to just before her last small snack, rather than earlier with dinner. Months later, her morning readings had grown noticeably steadier. Nothing about that is magic. It is simply what consistent, well-timed habits tend to do, quietly, over time. I want to pause here and talk practically, because not every bottle labeled olive oil delivers the same effect, and this is a detail I see overlooked constantly. The peppery, slightly sharp sensation you feel at the back of your throat with a good quality extra virgin olive oil is not a flaw. It is oleocanthal, the same anti-inflammatory compound we have discussed throughout this video, making itself known. A mild, smooth oil with no bite at all has typically lost much of that compound through age, poor storage, or processing. Look for oils in dark glass bottles rather than clear plastic, stored away from direct light and heat. Check for a harvest date rather than only a best-by date, since freshness fades steadily within the first year of pressing. In Europe, food regulators only permit olive oil to carry a specific label claim about protecting blood lipids from oxidative stress when the oil meets a verified minimum polyphenol content. That single labeling detail tells you the manufacturer has actually measured what is inside the bottle, rather than relying on the word olive oil alone to do the talking. It is also worth saying clearly that more is not better here. A tablespoon a night is the amount most of the research we have discussed tonight is actually based on. Doubling or tripling that amount does not double the benefit. It simply adds extra calories from fat that your body has to process, and at a certain point that extra load works against the very goals you are trying to reach. Consistency at a modest dose has always outperformed an occasional large dose in olive oil and in almost every area of medicine I have practiced. Before we finish, I want to answer a few questions almost every patient asks me once we get this far in the conversation, because you are probably wondering the same things right now. Does it have to be extra virgin olive oil specifically? Yes, and this matters more than people expect. Refined or light olive oils go through processing that strips out most of the polyphenols and oleocanthal we have spent this entire video discussing. You would be left with a fat source, but you would lose almost everything that makes this habit worth doing in the first place. Extra virgin, cold-pressed, with a real harvest date is the standard worth holding to. What if you are already on blood pressure medication or a cholesterol-lowering medication, but not a blood thinner? For the vast majority of these medications, olive oil works alongside them without conflict. In fact, this is part of why heart-healthy eating patterns built around olive oil are so often recommended specifically for patients managing blood pressure and cholesterol. The caution I gave you earlier was specific to blood thinning medication and upcoming surgery, not medication in general, and I want that distinction to be clear rather than leaving you uncertain about every prescription in your cabinet. What if you genuinely dislike the taste, even a good quality oil? You do not have to take it straight from the spoon. Stirring it into a small amount of warm water with a pinch of sea salt softens the sharpness considerably. Some patients prefer drizzling it over a small portion of plain yogurt instead. The compounds work the same way regardless of how you get them into your body, so find the version you will actually stick with, because consistency matters more than the method. And one question I am asked constantly, often with a kind of quiet worry behind it: is it too late to start this in your 70s, 80s, or beyond? The research behind nearly everything we discussed tonight, the cardiovascular trials, the inflammation studies, the cognitive aging data, was conducted largely in older adults, not young, healthy volunteers in their 20s. This habit was studied in bodies like yours, at the age you are right now, and it showed real benefit at that age. There is no cutoff where your body stops being able to respond. I want to be completely transparent with you about something, because your trust matters far more to me than how this video performs. Olive oil before bed is not a treatment for existing heart disease. It will not reverse diabetes. It will not regrow cartilage or muscle you have already lost. If you are managing a diagnosed condition, this habit works best as quiet support alongside your prescribed medical care, never as a replacement for it. Anyone telling you a kitchen ingredient can replace your doctor's treatment plan is not being honest with you, and I never want to be that voice in your life. What this habit genuinely does is shift the environment your body operates in every single night, gently and safely for the overwhelming majority of people, toward less inflammation, steadier blood sugar, and real cardiovascular support during the exact hours your body is most exposed. So let us return to the question that brought you here tonight. What actually happens if you drink olive oil every night before bed? In the early hours, your gut begins its overnight cleaning process, while anti-inflammatory compounds enter your bloodstream. Through the most dangerous stretch of the night, between 3 and 7 in the morning, your cardiovascular system receives quiet reinforcement exactly when your arteries are under the greatest daily stress. While you sleep deeply, your joints, your muscles, and even your skin receive support during the hours your body is naturally built to repair itself, and your brain runs its own overnight cleaning system, clearing the kind of waste linked to memory decline. And as morning approaches, that same tablespoon helps your body manage its natural rise in blood sugar far more gently than it otherwise would. None of this requires a prescription. None of this requires a gym membership or a complete overhaul of how you live. It requires 1 tablespoon of good quality extra virgin olive oil, the kind with a little peppery bite at the back of your throat, taken about 30 minutes before bed, most nights, consistently, for months, not days. You are not too old to start tonight. Your body is still listening, still responding, still capable of healing in small, steady ways, every single night while you sleep. For more calm, practical health guidance for older adults, subscribe to Senior Health Sessions. I will see you in the next one. And until then, take care of yourself the way you would take care of someone you love, because you deserve exactly that kind of care too.